here tonight. If you'd like to go ahead and turn your cameras on so you can see your neighbors' faces, that's great. That would be okay. We just ask that you keep your microphones on mute unless you have a question for the end of the session today. I do want to go over a couple of the virtual meeting ground rules for those of you that haven't participated with us before. This is our third public workshop. But as I said, this meeting is being recorded. It will be posted on the city's official YouTube channel. Please keep your mic muted during the presentation, but you can submit questions in writing during the chat. And what we'll do is we'll go back through the chat log and respond to each of those questions at the end of the presentation. And then just so we can kind of keep this orderly and not have everybody talk at the same time, we'd ask that you raise your hand using the virtual control during our Q&A session at the end. And I don't think anybody is dialed in by phone right now, but if you are on the phone, you can press *9 for assistance. And if anybody needs any help, any technical support, you can also reach out to our team through the chat function. And it looks like Mayor Sladek is on the line. I just wanted to invite her to say hello to everybody if she cares to tonight. I know she's got a family also, so she may be juggling kids right now, but if you'd like to, Mayor, please feel free to welcome everyone.
Well, thank you everybody for being here tonight. This is really for you guys to let us know where you want Oviedo to go. So I'm just going to be a fly on the wall best I can, and please do not hold back. We're hoping to have this all finalized by June, but that means you speaking up now. So looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And I should introduce myself. My name is Curtis Stradka. I lead the community planning studio at VHB. We are the consultant that's been hired by the city to help facilitate the comprehensive plan process. So what we're going to do tonight is give you an overview of the project. Some of you have seen this before, but for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we want to give you a foundation for why we're doing this. Talk about the progress we've made to date with the city and the results of the public workshops. And then we're going to look at some far-reaching scenarios. And this is where the mayor said, think big, don't hold back. Let us know what you think of these, because these are, we'll be using the information we get from this workshop to complete the rest of our work in the next steps. So we want to start off, for those of you that haven't joined us before, explaining what the comprehensive plan is. So it's a written document with graphics that is designed to manage growth and development within a community. And all cities and counties within the state are required to have one by the Florida Growth Management Act. This plan contains goals, objectives, and policies for various aspects of a community, like the future land use, or where different residential or commercial or industrial uses are arranged, how they are connected together by transportation, and what kind of housing is needed to support the current and future residents of a community. And then the comprehensive plan is very important because all of the development, whether it's site planning or rezoning, needs to be consistent with that plan. And it looks like we have our youngest member of the audience participating, so that's great, because this is a plan for the future. We're looking 25 years out where this young person may be a business owner or a homeowner within the community. So we're planning for that generation as well.
And very truly, where will these people live? I think a lot of people have not thought through, you've got kids now and you think, what do you want it to be like now? Or what would you like it to be like 20 years from now if you were still the same age and the whole life was frozen in time? But where will you be in 20 years? Where do you want to live? Do you still want to live here? What about in the same house?
Thank you. So the city's last major comprehensive plan update was in the year 2010 with a current horizon of just 5 years from now. So what this plan update will do is extend it out for 25 more years. So we're going to look at how that could affect transportation with the city, how that could affect the people that want to move to Oviedo because you're the top place in Florida to live by money.com or Money Magazine. and how do we, preserve the quality of life for the people that currently live within the city. So we are engaging in the citywide visioning process. This is the third of our public workshops that, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we've had to do virtually, but hopefully we'll get to a point where we can all see each other again in person at some of the public hearings. So there was a four-step process we're going through. The first part is answering the question, where are we now? So establishing a baseline of existing conditions. The second step is, where are we going? So that was our last workshop, and I'll show you the results of that coming up in about 5 or 10 minutes. This third step is answering the question, where do we want to go? So again, everybody that's participating on the call today, we're anxious to hear from you, so you can tell us the different plan alternatives that we've created based on the feedback we got from prior sessions. Does this hit the mark for you, or would you like to see something different? And finally, we'll be preparing an action plan that is used by the city in the comprehensive plan amendment process. So that's updating the goals and objectives of that written plan, and we'll have further public workshops to adopt that. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the first step, which is, where are we now? And those of you that have lived in the city for a long time, of course, understand this, that you've experienced very rapid population growth, more than 20% each decade since 1990. So, this is one of the reasons why comprehensive planning is so important, because many communities experience this explosive growth. And if it's not planned in an organized way, looking at the big picture, then communities get these unintended results where it ends up being sprawl down the road, or you get incompatible uses next to each other. So that's why, as planners, the city wants to take that big picture look for the next 25 years. The city is predominantly single family residential land. We see that the water, sewer, wastewater is all sufficient right now in terms of public infrastructure, and that looks to continue in the future. But of course, as we've heard from many of our meetings, transportation is a big concern of many folks within the city. You may or may not know that the city has grown through annexation by about 345 acres since 1990, but has more or less is bounded to the by environmental systems, or by, say, winter springs to the west. This is the city's current future land use map. So the different colors on the map represent different future land use categories. And we're going to zoom into some specific sites to give you a little bit more insight on what these mean. But the different and various land use colors dictate how much residential density or non-residential intensity, building square footage, such as office or industrial development, can go within each parcel on the land. So the future land use map is very important within the city. So we've analyzed, based on that existing, today's future land use map, and we've compared that against the vacant parcels within the city. So parcels that are undeveloped. And if all of the vacant parcels were developed at the maximum density or floor area ratio intensity that is allowed within the city, then there are current development rights or existing development rights that property owners have today for plus or minus 3,100 new residential dwelling units and 5.1 million square feet of non-residential development. Or the comprehensive plan also allows for bonuses to be requested. So if you were to apply the bonuses, it would be just over 4,200 dwelling units and 5.7 million square feet of non-residential development. My understanding is that the bonuses have actually not been requested in the past. So no property owner has applied for them, or very limited scale. And those are granted for innovative design, for provision of workforce or affordable housing, or other sustainability measures. So to recap, that is the vacant housing that could be developed. We also looked at how actual development has compared to what is allowed as the maximum future land use categories. And all the blue bar charts show the current density that is actually built today in the city. So for example, let me pick this one. The high density residential category, if you can see my mouse moving, has actually built at 3.97 units per acre, while what is allowed is 15 units per acre without bonuses. So you can see that the high or the maximum density is usually not met within the city based on the current actual development that's taken place. We also analyzed the current non-residential uses, so which is measured in a term called FAR, or floor area ratio. And that is a measure of how much building can be physically built or allowed to be built on a site. So if a land use has a FAR of 1.0, which this one shows, that means you could build 1 acre of building on a 1 acre site. And again, as you can see in the blue lines show the actual amount of building in the different future land use categories that allow non-residential development, compared to the green line, which is the maximum that's allowed. So what we take away from these charts is that the land is not being used currently to its, you could call it its maximum density or its highest and best value. And that's okay. That's, market forces control that, or the desires of home builders or residents. But we wanted to show you that the maximum that is allowed is not always actually achieved in real life. So with that, we'd like to transition to the next step, which looks to the future, or where are we going? So part of the comprehensive planning process that's required by the state of Florida is that you use population projections to look at least a minimum of 10 years in the future, and then come up with a plan for how to accommodate that future population. We are looking 25 years in the future. The reason we're doing that is because some of our regional partners, Seminole County and Metroplan Orlando, are also in the process of doing 25-year plans to the year 2045. So we want to, as best we can, keep our population projections consistent with them, because that can help with data sharing and, say, applying for grants or something like that. The state of Florida, it's almost the de facto population projection source is called BEBR, or the Bureau of Economic and Business Research at the University of Florida. And they publish a low, a medium, and a high estimate. So for the year 2045, we are looking at the BEBR high estimate, which is roughly consistent with the Seminole County estimate for the same year within the City of Oviedo. So it's roughly an increase of 20,000 people from our year 2019 estimate of 40,000. And as we've seen, the city has grown by about 20% per decade. So this is a fairly reasonable amount of population growth that's expected. It's okay that we're with there's ranges, and it may not reach the 60,000 person projection. It may come in lower. We don't know what will happen, but we feel like it's more conservative to plan for the higher number, because then you can be prepared for more people and more infrastructure needs. This plan I'm showing you was prepared by Seminole County when they did some recent socioeconomic data analysis. And this shows where they believe the population growth would occur within the city. And this is the county taking traffic analysis zones to look at where they think, again, growth could potentially occur, but not taking a look at where the vacant sites are, where the places that are strategically important could be, where the city may have already identified a redevelopment area or a area of emphasis. So this is, a potential look at how population could be distributed if nothing changed, if there were no new plan policies or other master plans to direct development and growth in the future. We've also taken a look at the Seminole County, in this case, it's their 2040 transportation plan. And you can see that, most of the major highways are that dark red color or kind of magenta, which indicates it's a level of service F, which means that it's unreasonable congestion for planning purposes. So that's something that we want to address and see if there's other strategies besides widening the roads to improve upon the level of service. Because many of the roads are already 6 lanes, and it's actually not very good for the fabric of a community to widen them to 8 lanes. It makes it harder for people to cross them, makes it less walkable and more of an automobile-centric environment that the comprehensive plan is going to look to avoid. And then finally, we're also looking at projected levels of service for your basic public infrastructure. Here's 2 examples where on the left, the existing sewer capacity is already at such a level that it will meet any of the 3 growth rates. Potable water meets the medium growth rate, and we may have to look at some policies for for the provision of potable water in the future if we truly think that the higher growth rate is going to occur. So these are the things that we study to make sure that the city is able to provide the services and infrastructure to its residents. So want to take you through this exercise. When we look at the 20,000 new people that we are projecting to be in the city in the year 2045, using the current persons per household rate of, it's just over 3.2 or 3.3 persons per household, that equates to roughly 6,000 new units that are required for that 20,000 person growth. If you recall, we looked at the vacant lands capacity about 5 slides or 10 slides back, and we showed that there's roughly 3,100 to 4,250 vacant units that are on the ground and available. There's already development rights for them. And if the property owner were to build them at the maximum capacity that's allowed, that is the amount of residential units that the city would have today if there were no changes. But you can see the difference between the 6,000 and then this range means that we would still have an unmet demand for between 1,750 and just under 3,000 new units within the city. So that's why we, as part of this growth scenario, these different visioning scenarios, we're going to ask for your feedback on some of the locations we're going to propose the potential for increased density to help meet this unmet demand for new residential units. We did an exercise with a number of different groups where we asked those groups to place dots, these dots on the map. I'll show you the results of that soon. But we asked them if you could, if you understood that the different dots represent 1,000 units each, and you have to absorb that 6,000 person population, where is the ideal place in the city to do that? Is it along the fringes? Is it to redevelop different areas? Is it to redevelop existing, say, subdivisions? Is it to expand the boundaries? So we asked folks to help us imagine that. This was our first public workshop. We had 4 different groups do this exercise. You can see the little number is the group number. And we had 4 groups do this independently and show us where they thought the most ideal places for growth and development within the city of Oviedo would be. And you can see there were some clusters developed in the downtown area, south of Mitchell Hammock Road here, along the vacant properties on Mitchell Hammock Road, on top of the Oviedo Mall, and then some desire for lower density. So this is single family residential in the area between the county's rural boundary and the city's boundary. So that was the results of about 50 people who participated in that workshop. We also met with ION, Improving Oviedo's Neighborhoods, to do the same exercise. And as you can see, it's fairly similar, where they said, let's focus our growth in downtown at this vacant area south of Mitchell Hammock Road, the vacant parcels south, again, on the west Mitchell Hammock Road, and then the area around the Oviedo Mall. And if I neglected to say it, I'll just repeat it. The numbers on the inside of the circles represents a potential density, or 50 units per acre. This one is 15 units per acre, so this would be more of a, say a garden apartment style. And this one would be 3.5, would be roughly single family residential on quarter acre lots, or traditional suburban development. Each of the circles represents 1,000 units, but because they're at different density scales, they've got the 50 or 75 has a smaller development footprint, because you're looking at vertical development rather than horizontal development. Our final map, or our final exercise, was with a group of large property owners and other business owners that the city invited. So we did the same exercise with them. And again, you can see a fairly consistent pattern across all three of these different exercises we did, where there's a cluster of our circles downtown, a cluster at the Oviedo Mall area, some additional development for the vacant lands to the south of Mitchell Hammock Road, and then along the spray field area here. And then there was some interest in a commercial or industrial node to the north there. So we're looking at all these maps together to try to help educate ourselves on where the public thought growth should occur. And the next part of this is Tyler is going to walk us through some of the different aspects we looked at to try to develop visioning scenarios based upon again, the feedback we got from the public. So Tyler, if you'll turn on your screen and you can take over this section.
Perfect. Thank you, Kurt, and thank you everyone for joining. I just want to repeat that this meeting is being recorded for folks who may have joined a little late, and that includes the chat where the questions will be. That'll also be part of the record on this. What you're seeing on the screen now, if you participated in one of our previous workshops or meetings, might look familiar. This was a word cloud exercise that we did. This is an example from City Council and staff on how do you envision Oviedo in 2045, and we see some common themes come up, and the larger the word relates to the more times it was answered or submitted as an answer. So vibrant, urban, sustainable, connected, walkable, kind of some of those items. And this is just one example. We had questions about what are some of the strengths of Oviedo. What makes people want to live here, and there were answers from the school, the sense of community, on those lines, and then what are some of the challenges as well, and transportation was one of the main ones on that, and how can we address that in the comprehensive plan and in some of the qualities of development as we move forward. So we took all of that, we distilled it into highlights of issues and opportunities, focusing on location and the benefits of the city, and brought it with some of the city's previous planning efforts, that we have to get to qualities of desired development. And so we have 10 qualities of desired development. and here they are. So I'll get into what these mean in terms of addressing some of those issues and addressing some of the opportunities in just a minute, but so everyone can hear, it's mixed use, connectivity, capacity, and that means enhancing, let's say, the capacity of the roadway and the bicycle and pedestrian networks throughout the city. Multimodal options, compact infill, complete streets, vibrant, a sense of place, smart in terms of technology, and design. And those are 10 qualities of development. If you remember before, there was also one of the main items, and this is, we heard at multiple meetings, is the desire for a sustainable community. So what is sustainability? In planning terms, when we look at it, we are, when we look at comprehensive planning, we are talking about addressing the needs of the community today in such a way that it doesn't affect the ability of future generations to also meet their needs. And it's a three-legged stool approach, if you will, with either the 3 Ps, the people, planet, and prosperity, or the 3 Es of equity, environment, and economy. And the main, the main sense for this is that, sorry about that. The main sense for this is that you can't have, in order to have a sustainable community, you need to address all of these. So it's the people living in your community, it's the environment and preservation, as well as creating a fiscally sustainable community. And that's one of the issues that we'll touch on in a bit. So getting into some of the qualities of development, the first one is mixed use. So this is either vertical mixed use, where you might have retail or restaurant on the first floor, and office or commercial, office or residential on floors above. Or it could be a horizontal mixture of uses where you have a development or a neighborhood that incorporates all of these uses in a single cohesive development. And one of the benefits of creating these type of neighborhoods and communities is that it increases walkability because you have the uses that you may use every day, or you may use certain days in a way that you can bike or walk to. And that starts addressing something, and when we look at, as Kurt mentioned, in the comprehensive plan, all of these elements have to be tied together. So how does a future land use affect transportation issues? In a mixed use development, we have something called internal capture. So it actually reduces the reliance on external roadways for the same amount of development because you're able to capture some of those trips inside the development. So it's when it says decreased total vehicle trips, it's from a similar size development if it was not mixed use in terms of square footage in units. And it also diversifies and enhances the city's tax base. So you'll see on that little call out box, but studies have shown, premium for these type of mixed use communities with connected streets and higher densities are seeing 4 to 15% premiums for not just residential, but also for commercial and office space. So what that does is not only are you not relying on a single market for the city's tax base, but you're actually enhancing some of that commercial non-residential value to enhance the city's tax base. And finally, we heard this a lot too, is having these local businesses needs to be supported by residents who live there. So you need to have, if you have more residents living in an area, there's more local support for these businesses that can help them survive and thrive. So some of these themes you'll see it come up again, but that's kind of the mixed use. Compact infill, this really focuses on reducing the urban sprawl and really focusing on determining the appropriate areas for development, because part of that is determining the appropriate areas for preservation. So if you focus development on certain areas strategically, the other side of that coin is you're preserving open space in other areas because you're not allowing the sprawl development to just take over everything. And as in the call out box on this one, this was a study done by the Global Commission on Economy and Climate, talking about the effects of limiting density in areas. But the main takeaway, I think, for this is that where densities are limited and it's primarily single family, the land consumption per capita goes up 80%. So you may have the same amount of green space if you look at it as an aerial, but the green space would be fragmented into different developments and behind fences, and it takes away from the cohesive single kind of preservation area of the overall greater ecosystem. So there's that. The other side, the other benefit of this really is that if you're focusing on infill development, which is really looking at those vacant parcels that maybe the hole in the donut, if you will, you really start being able to take advantage of infrastructure that, as Kurt showed with the, for instance, the capacities for this projected demand. So if development is focused in areas where there's already access to sewer and water and roads, you're not extending those services out. You're able to operate and maintain those services more efficiently and reduce the need for large new capital improvement expenditure kind of outlays in the budget. Once again, it goes along with mixed use with the walkability and the tax base as well. The next one I believe is connectivity. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the compact urban infill, but it's not just vehicular connectivity. A reduction of cul-de-sacs, but it's also adding to bicycle and pedestrian connectivity. This helps reduce the volume on the major roadways if there are some alternative routes, and we'll talk about these in some of our scenarios later. But to reduce the congestion for some of these developments in some of these areas from having a single point on a main roadway, so you're reducing the reliance on the main thoroughfares. It also reduces the number of roads that the city is maintaining that that serve just a small number of developments. Those still will exist. Those are still important. But if you can maintain connections, then it has some resiliency if a roadway needs to be maintained or redone, that you have these extra connections that help with that as well. Walkability and bikeability, I'd say it again. The final thing I want to point out on this is the improve emergency response. So the little study you see on this one, this was in 2012 in Charlotte, North Carolina, but they found that in compact areas versus the sprawl in the fringes of the city, they needed 4 times fewer fire and EMT stations, or 4 times more in the sprawling areas, which leads to 4 times the cost. And I'll mention, I don't have the exact numbers, but Osceola County recently presented at the American Planning Association Florida Summit, and they had similar findings where it came to, if they connected a roadway or 2, their emergency response stations were able to serve is about 4 times the population, actually, since they didn't have to go on the circuitous routes to make the calls. So I think the next one, we combined a few here. They all go together, but providing multimodal options, complete streets, and increasing and enhancing capacity. So complete streets these are streets designed for the safe and easy access by all modes of users. So that's pedestrians, it's cyclists, but it's also freight, which with more people online shopping now is something that we want to pay attention to. Transit is something that came up, in the possibility for transit, and I failed to mention that in the compact infill, but there are studies on what transit supportive densities are, and it's not single family, it's more of that medium high density to support the transit and bus rapid transit systems, as well as drivers, of course. The car is not going away, and so we need to plan for the drivers and safe use of the roadways for them as well. But this really encourages active transportation, so biking and walking, which has significant impacts on the health, or could have significant impacts on the health of the community. Has some environmental impacts if you're getting more people out of the car, especially for those short trips, those 1 mile or half-mile trips. Can reduce air pollution and fuel consumption. And a great example for this one is in Orlando. This is about a decade ago. Edgewater Drive, so just northwest of downtown, went through a complete street project. It was a repurposing of a travel lane into a bike lane. It was just a resurfacing job. It wasn't a big financial expenditure for the city, but what they saw was when they did that, they improved safety. There was a 40% reduction in collisions on the roadway. So it's a safer roadway for vehicles and for people who are on it. There's a reduction in vehicle traffic. So there were fewer people that did it, whether they chose to go route or they just got on their bikes or walk somewhere because they could. And you see that there was a 30% increase in bicyclists and 23% increase in pedestrians. And with all those people on the street, the local businesses saw a boom. There were 88 new businesses that came in, 500 new jobs, a few bicycle stores catering to those people using it. So that really just kind of shows when you plan for this and you can design it right, it has impacts, wide ranging. It's not just providing a trail, but it affects the safety and the health of the community and the economy as well. And Metro Plan Orlando, the local transportation planning organization, also has recently completed a complete street report, and they said that in their region, so it's the Seminole, Orange, and Osceola counties, households spend an average of 26% of their income on transportation. So if we can provide this connectivity, if we can provide these multimodal options, and people can spend more time and more trips biking or walking, that also has the potential to be more money in the pocket of residents, which is always a good thing. Another one we combined is vibrancy and sense of place. Obviously, people want to be in Oviedo. There's a strong sense of place. We heard that at the meetings. Kurt mentioned the top 50 cities in the United States. The only one that made the list in Florida. So congratulations on that. That's it's why people want to be there. It's the whole idea of placemaking, is creating these memorable places that people want to be. And what makes people happy, and it's how it's designed, it's what the community feels like, but it's also the programming and what's going on there. So having a place that's having these public open spaces that are able to be activated by events. Farmers market, for one example, is Corinne Drive in Orlando a couple years ago was named best Main Street in the year, or best Main Street in America for the year. And that all started with a local farmers market that took over a parking lot on Monday nights. So it really showed how if you have these locations in these areas that are open to the public, that are activated by some of these events, you can really grow that sense of place, make a really vibrant community, and just really it just keeps growing. And with all that, it brings all the new businesses. It brings people spending their money into the city. So people who may not live in Oviedo still could travel to see these events, and the people who live there will spend their money in the city as opposed to going outside the city. So it has some really great benefits on that. The next one is I believe design. So similar to vibrancy, smart community. I jumped one ahead. Smart community. This is another one we heard. A lot of communities are talking about how can they be a smart community. We found that there are much fewer that are actually making those plans. But it's how can you incorporate technology and innovation into the city's services and their daily operations to make it more efficient and resilient and adaptable, really. I think the quote on the bottom is fascinating, saying, this is Ray Kurzweil, Director of Engineering at Google, who said, "We won't experience 100 years of progress in the 21st century. It will be more like 20,000 years of progress at today's rate." So that really is showing that, in the next 25 years, as we're planning, as we're, creating these policies for the 25-year plan for the city, there's going to be technology, there's going to be applications, there's going to be all sorts of stuff that we don't know, but how can we position the city to be adaptable, to take advantage of those new things? And as you can see in the graphic, it's a lot of the stuff I've touched on already. It's not just having a building on Wi-Fi that talks to your phone, that talks to your car, that talks to your refrigerator, but it's also how can the city look at how they provide water service and energy and public health and waste management and all of those. as well as I do want to mention also bridging the digital divide, which is um, the separation between communities that have reliable computer and internet access and those that don't. And in a time when so many people are working from home, that's come even more to the forefront now. So how can we look at those? How can we look at those aspects of the comprehensive plan as we move forward? Now I think I get to design. Going back to this is part of how you can help create a place of sense of place and placemaking. And these policies that you see here, these are already in the city, creating their downtown master plan, looking at creating front setbacks and consistency of building heights, and creating that that pedestrian-friendly environment, as well as Kurt mentioned earlier the density bonuses for innovative design and public open space and bicycle and pedestrian amenities, and those may not have been taken advantage of. Now, how can we look at those as we move forward in a way to encourage those aspects of development more? And this was from study we did showing that retailers along streets that are landscaped with shade trees and have public open spaces where people can congregate and spend time, especially I just think of Florida and the shade trees, obviously in the summer, but they see it's about a 30% more foot traffic on the road in those areas, and businesses are seeing a 12% increase in spending. So people are visiting and spending more money there. So it's one other thing that just is great for the local economy. I think finally, we get to fiscal sustainability. This is one of the things I touched on, and how everything works together. So communities that have a mixture of uses, like I said, are financially more resilient. They're not dependent on one market for their tax base, for their jobs, for their employment options, and all of that within the city, keeping it within the city instead of folks having to drive out of the city and come back every night. Really helps those opportunities. So a lot of stuff that I've mentioned before. But we're also finding that communities that are primarily single family residential, some of them are not generating enough tax revenue to continue providing services. So it's not just the outlay for a new road or new sewer, it's the annual maintenance cost that goes along with that. And some communities are finding that they need to increase tax rates to address that issue. And going along that, the sprawl, it creates more traffic. People have to get in their car more. A lot of the stuff that I've mentioned in building those new roads and infrastructure. And in 2012, the cost of sprawl study was done, and this is available. They actually have a website at costofsprawl.com with updated articles and everything. But they found that the annual average household for public services and kind of dense walkable urban areas is $1,400 per unit, and up to just over $3,400 in more of the urban sprawl environments, just showing kind of the difference in how much it costs the city to serve and annually maintain those types of areas. And I think with that, we'll get into some of the scenario planning.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. So we wanted to use that to both inform and educate you on some of the policies that already exist within the city's comprehensive plan, and then provide some real world numbers, like increased spending or increased tax base, to again provide a little bit more context for some of these scenarios. So what we're going to do next is get into the vision scenario planning part of this presentation. So what we're doing is we're working off of the maps that were created during the where are we going activities with those three groups. We are trying to address those qualities of development that are already in the comprehensive plan. Look at how we can address the needs of current and future residents, and then think about how these different scenarios compare to the trend plan, which is really no change. So the city's development pattern would stay the same. We created 3 different visioning scenarios, again, using that feedback we got from the community at those workshops. We tried to make them all different, so they're not subtly different, but they want to provide you with different choices to look at. And we're going to have a discussion at the end after we run through these about what folks on this call today think about these different scenarios. And if it's possible to reach consensus on a preferred one, we'd love to hear that. Where we end up tonight and subsequent meetings with city staff and other residents and through future public hearings will serve as the basis for the 2045 future land use map in that comprehensive plan update. So the first scenario we call downtown revitalization, and we wanted to give all of these a theme. And this one we're calling the Economic and Cultural Center of Seminole County. And you've already kind of seen some of that recognition from the money.com award. So we wanted to focus on the downtown for this one. So this would employ walkable, dense, mixed-use development in 2 different nodes. I'm going to show you a larger map in a moment, but this is the old downtown. So, you know, where Geneva Drive comes in at an angle and Central Avenue down the middle. And then this is an area called south of Mitchell Hammock Road. And if you recall from those density maps, we saw some clusters of dots here. And this also corresponds with, in many cases, existing vacant lands. So we also wanted to provide some pros and cons for the different scenarios. We think by focusing on these 2 distinct nodes that build upon the existing downtown, we're able to, again, focus on a place and a destination. And it's intentional that we're focusing on these 2 places rather than spreading, you know, red dots out throughout the map in, say, existing residential neighborhoods. We think that there's going to be the potential for better transit service by, again, concentrating our growth in some strategic areas. Right now, the transit service has about 1 hour headways or times between buses to get down to, say, UCF. But, you know, I think many people would use transit more if it had more reliable or improved service times. And then we would also expect that residents living downtown could better support the businesses that grow there by proximity. And then the con is that, again, we're looking at one area of the city, and some people may say, well, I'd like to see some of that growth on my property or a different part of the city. And then again, we may be overlooking other opportunity areas that are vacant within the city by focusing on this one scenario. So let me go to a larger map. Again, the old downtown, which is a named place within the city already, and there's a downtown master planning effort that is going on concurrently with this. And then the area called south of Mitchell Hammock Road. I'm going to show you a couple more maps. This is a map that shows you vacant lands. So everything that is blue is vacant. And then everything that is green is wetlands. So we are not allowed to build within wetlands. You can mitigate them, but we thought to be conservative, we're not going to assume any wetlands mitigation, although a property owner could apply to the environmental agencies to do wetlands mitigation. That is permitted. But for our planning purposes, we are staying out of the wetlands. And then the black outline is the downtown mixed-use area, which is a district that's already described in the comprehensive plan. It's got a number of sub areas that I'll show you on the next map. I also want to point out that we are proposing this little square here, which is primarily vacant, to be incorporated into the downtown mixed-use area. Here are the current existing future land uses for the different downtown areas. So this is no change to the plan. There's the west of Central in red here, which allows up to 16 units per acre. South of Mitchell Hammock today allows up to 18 units per acre. This is the new downtown, or most of you know it as Oviedo on the Park. This allows up to 50 units per acre, but I believe its actual building is much lower. It may be at 30 units per acre. East of Central, the sub-district there has a density of up to 16 units per acre. And then finally, the old downtown allows today up to 18 units per acre, but we know there's considerable interest in the redevelopment of the old downtown. So the first area we'd like to consider increased density or a future land use change is the south of Mitchell Hammock Road area. And this would, in this case, we would want to increase the density to be somewhat similar to the Oviedo on the Park or the new downtown mixed use that is allowed here. So if it's a single use, say multifamily apartments by themselves, up to 24 units. But if a developer does vertical mixed use, then we would think it would have a potential of up to 40 units per acre. And we think this would provide a good synergy with the development that is already existing at Oviedo on the Park, as well as adjacent to City Hall. The next area is the old downtown, which we're showing in crosshatches. So here, again, we would propose up to 30 units per acre for single use multifamily or horizontal mixed use. Say there's separated land uses that are commercial and residential, but not necessarily built in the same building. We would consider that horizontal mixed use. And then vertical mixed use, say a ground floor retail with apartments on top, could be up to 50 units per acre. And that mirrors what is allowed today within the new downtown or this yellow area. So what we're trying to create here is two nodes of intense development in this downtown revitalization area. The new downtown with the percolation pond area or south of Mitchell Hammock Road, and then the old downtown, while leaving the sub-districts in the middle the same. So Tyler, I think you were going to do scenario 2, and then when we, as we move into, after we come through the third scenario, we'd love to hear from everybody about these different ideas, which they're just ideas for right now. And again, we're looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Kurt. Yeah, as we you may remember from some of those dot maps, the two areas you see over on the map, which we'll zoom in on in a sec, were other areas in the city where folks wanted to explore the possibility of.
Tyler, can you check your microphone? It's a little.
Sorry, is this better?
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry about that. As you may remember from some of the dot exercises we looked at, these two areas that are shown on the map, we'll zoom in on a second, were some areas that folks wanted to explore the possibility of increased density or redevelopment. One of them is the West Gateway, which would be the Oviedo Mall area, and then the west of Mitchell Hammock Road, so the vacant lands primarily south and north on Mitchell Hammock Road, just west of 426. The mall is potential redevelopment. Understand there's an apartment complex that went through approval earlier this year, but how the rest of that site redevelops.
Hey Tyler.
Yes.
Do you think you could unplug your headset? I think it's getting all wacky. It's coming and going. Thanks.
All right, let's see. Testing. Is it still off, Kurt? All right, hold on a second.
I think it's better.
I was suggesting just unplug it completely and use your computer's mic and speaker. It's at least consistent because it's strong and then it drops off. So I think
how does I just switched to my computer for a moment, so I apologize for any background.
Fabulous. That's much that's much louder. Thanks.
Any background noise now. So yes, really focusing on the mall and understand there's a recent apartment approval that went through earlier this year, but how does the rest of that site, what's the possibility for redevelopment on that? be it residential, the potential for, say, one user as an employment hub, or a light industrial distribution to possibly come in. We know that, for instance, Amazon is looking at the possibility of malls for that last mile distribution for some of their online shipping, and what that might be able to do. So really looking at some flexibility there. This site, as I'll show in a moment, also looks at some alternative connections to Mitchell Hammock Road to alleviate some of the pressure on that facility and provide those alternative connections we talked about earlier. And then those would have all the multimodal aspects as well. So this really helps to connect some of the connect the grid, if you will, and allow those additional alternative routes. And those new routes that you'll see do open up some new opportunities for redevelopment on areas that may not that may be vacant now because it doesn't make sense to build a development right now, or the owner might not want to do that if they don't have the roadway access. So opening up those and providing those connections are important. A few things that this doesn't address: it doesn't address the downtown areas much. This would just leave downtown as it is. New roads are obviously that capital expenditure that would need to be planned for and programmed to do that. And the mall, one of the things we heard why people were looking over there was because the access to 417 obviously is great. It takes some of the pressure of the roadways away from the inside of the city, but it really, it's split from the city by 417 for that exact reason. So creating a overall sense of Oviedo, sense of place. If you do something over there, it may not really connect to the rest of the city, and it may be separated. So you're not getting that cohesion throughout the city. Is one of the issues. So yeah, these are the two sites again, and we'll zoom in on each one to look at some of the environmental concerns here. So this is the West Mitchell Hammock Road. The blue, once again, is the vacant parcels. So you see the large parcels north and south. There's some existing commercial and industrial and some low density residential in this area as well through here. And you can see there's some wetland concerns, but primarily these are out of wetlands. So on this site, we move. This would be the future land use today. So it's a combination of low density residential, both city and county, some medium density residential, industrial, commercial, some rural, some office. So it really is a mix of a bunch of uses. So we're looking at making it one cohesive district with a new land use that would be the West Mitchell Hammock. And that would be a similar to the densities that Kurt described for the old downtown or Mayor. I see the Uptown Oviedo area, up to 30 units an acre for multifamily or horizontal mixed use, and up to 50 for vertical mixed use. And that's not, to say that it's going to develop at that big. This would also allow for townhomes and different types of residential. We were made aware of a southwest kind of on your map here of a potential townhome development, and there are some areas that are already existing with residential, so it could provide for that mix as well. The second part of this scenario is the Oviedo Mall. So primarily west of 417, but we're actually looking at some of the vacant parcels to the east, understanding there's some mixed use over there as well. And this, once again, would be looking at potential redevelopment of the mall. It's currently what's called the Development of Regional Impact, or a DRI, and that's something that's before they had changed some legislature, it goes up to the state for review, and there's a series of conditions of approval and set development programs. So the development of the Oviedo Mall is not based on a future land use. It's based on a separate developers agreement. It allows, I believe in the city of Oviedo, it's up to about 1.5 million square feet of retail or office. So some hotels and 180 apartment units right So that's kind of what's available at the mall now. Once again, on the east side of 417, you have some vacant lands. That's a mix of some mixed use, commercial, industrial, and office again. This would be the same. I won't get too much more into what's there, but it's the same type of feel and character that we're looking at the other areas, creating that kind of dense potential node or village center type deal at the mall area, and how that works with the areas around it. Once again, with the potential that it could be redeveloped as something entirely different than that, and could be redeveloped as a potential industrial site or distribution, or some mix of different types of spaces, flex spaces or office. So we'd want to have the ability for that flexibility based on market conditions in this scenario for this one. I think with that, I'll pass it back off to Kurt.
All right.
Tyler, could I ask a question? Or this is Joe Toma. I don't know if you're taking questions. Should I put it in the chat?
Joe, it would be great if you could put it in the chat. We want to show the third scenario, and then we'll take questions from everybody. So, okay. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tyler. Our third scenario is a hybrid of the two that we showed you previously. So it combines portions of both the downtown revitalization and the gateways, that West Gateway and corridor scenario. We think that it kind of combines the best and the cons of each. So it balances some of the opportunities in different parts of the city. But again, you're spreading it out, so you may not be able to concentrate all of the say the growth and maybe the strategic place where infrastructure already exists to support it. So this map I'm showing you, this shows what if you were to add scenario 1 and 2 together. So that's all of the red you see here: West Gateway, West Mitchell Hammock, south of Mitchell Hammock, and then the downtown mixed use area. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take away portions of the red here, and then the red west of Central. So when I click my mouse, you're going to see a portion of that disappear. I'll go back really quick so you can see the first 1 and 2 combined. And then this is the third scenario, the hybrid scenario. So that's showing that we don't need to take all of that land and propose increased development rights to it. Again, just to walk through this, it's essentially the same scenario where we're trying to create a new density hub adjacent to and complementary to the new downtown. And in this case, on the old downtown, we would focus on the east side of Central rather than the west side. Again, to not over entitle or over create increased density that maybe the city doesn't want, or then we would also have to plan for all that additional density and show that the roads, the sewer, the water can support it. So in this case, we would only be looking at the east side of Central for the old downtown district. And again, these are ideas. We tried to translate what you told us at the various meetings, and we can talk through these after we move through the scenarios. And then in this case, the red area was a larger footprint. So we are only looking at the vacant parcels rather than the larger non-vacant parcel that was in this previously, as well as on the Western Gateway. We've omitted some of the vacant parcels on the east side of 417 to focus on the mall itself for potential redevelopment. So with that being said, I know we got a number of questions in through the chat. We are curious from those who are attending, if you have a preference for any of the scenarios that we've shown you so far. It's okay if you're not sure. It's okay if you don't like any of them. We'd like to know that from you so you can help us make this better. I think maybe we could answer some of the questions first that have come in. And Tyler, if you can help me go through those, just let me know who submitted it. And it's not too late to submit a question if you'd like to do that.
Yes, so we'll start going back up in the presentation. This was a question from Mr. Pollock. This was when we were talking kind of in the background of the previous workshops, Kurt, and it was what happens if we need 6,000 dwelling units and the zoning stayed the same? What would happen to that unmet demand of the 3,000 units? Downfalls versus benefits.
Okay, so if we were to not plan for the need for 6,000 units, what could potentially happen is say a master developer could purchase property and request development at a property that they buy, and they have the right to do that. They can petition the city to update the comprehensive plan. And the downfall becomes if there's more than one of these occurrences, then you start to see, leapfrog or hopscotch development in the city rather than a coordinated plan. So what we are attempting to do is look at the big picture all at once and try to focus the demand into the place we think, and based on what the citizens that have participated think, is the most appropriate place for this development to occur. But that doesn't take off all of the vacant lands and the property rights that people today already have. So people that own property, and if it's vacant, they can develop it up to their current development rights, or they could redevelop the property today, again, up to their current property rights.
So it's like if I have to use an analogy, it's like a controlled burn. The population growth is coming, and if we don't plan for it, it's going to come anyway, and then we won't be prepared for it. This is a way to prepare for that growth in a way that's controlled and allows us to plan for transportation and et cetera without having it occur without our guidance, essentially.
Yes, I would say it's proactive.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
The next was a comment saying multimodal is more than just things that have wheels, and that is absolutely correct. I apologize if I failed to mention that, but yeah, it's not just cars and trucks and bicycles and people walking. It's also you're looking at ages and abilities. So people walking, or people who may need mobility devices such as a walker to get across the street as well. So that's absolutely true on that. I just wanted to mention that, make sure that's up there. Some comments about my this is to the Mr. Toma's question. I'll get on that. I know you jumped in at the mall one, and this was, what are the considerations in possibly increasing maximum building height in the mall gateway area to increase density while minimizing the building footprint? And the mayor did mention that they budgeted for a ladder truck. So going vertical is, they're already preparing. So Kurt, I don't know if you want to mention heights, and then we'll jump back over to the downtown area.
Yes, so maximum building height is not building heights are not included in a comprehensive plan. That is controlled by the Land Development Code. To be honest, I do not know what the maximum building heights for that area are. Height is something that you actually would not want to include in your comprehensive plan because you cannot get a variance from the comprehensive plan, but you can grant a variance at the local level for a, if there's a reason why a height needs to be higher, and perhaps the applicant says, I can provide additional buffering or separation from adjacent uses. Height is almost never put in a comprehensive plan, and if it was, usually communities try to take it out because it limits their flexibility. They would have to apply to the state to change any heights anytime they come in.
This next one is from Jocelyn concerning the south of Mitchell Hammock area. Is that the land currently being used for wastewater? And she is wondering what the impact, anticipated impact on Mitchell Hammock.
Yes, that is the area being currently used for wastewater. The city has a lease on it that will expire. We have spoken to the property owner representatives, and they are interested in the possibility of increasing the development rights on that land. It is vacant today, so they would actually be able to apply for that themselves if they cared to. And I'm sorry, the second part was about traffic on Mitchell Hammock.
Anticipated impact on Mitchell Hammock.
Yes. So you may recall from some of Tyler's descriptions on compact mixed-use infill and how that can actually reduce the number of external trips that are put on roadways because people have the opportunity to walk to various, say, shops or restaurants or daily services when development is more compact. So the ITE manual, the Institute for Transportation Engineers, actually has lower trip generation rates for high density multifamily than it does for single family residential. It also provides a higher percentage of that internal capture rate. And then when you have, again, increased density, you do have the opportunity for enhanced or increased transit service, which would also potentially take single occupant cars off of the road.
And Kurt, I'll add too, you mentioned this, but as we move forward and when you update a comprehensive plan and you were to change future land uses like this, it's called the large scale comprehensive plan amendment. It needs to go to the state for review, and that typically would include data and analysis, which would look at the potential impacts of what that future land use change would have to not just transportation, but wastewater and potable water and parks and rec and all the services that the city provides as part of that analysis that would be included in this update. The next, I'm going to.
She should sleep good tonight.
Folks, allow me. I'm going to combine a couple questions here. Pam asked if there was a slide for each option that shows the change in density on each parcel, pointing out the rural 1 unit per acre going to a higher number on Mitchell Hammock, and Mr. Williamson asked if the unit numbers were equal for each. Kurt, I think those can be similar.
Yes. So when we evaluated each of those, looking at vacant parcels only, so taking out actual redevelopment, but only using vacant or undeveloped parcels. The scenario 1 had just under, and that's the downtown development, had just under 2,500 units at the proposed density. So it kind of fell in the middle of that range we were seeking to fulfill. Scenario 2, which is the West Gateway and the other lands to the West Mitchell Hammock, because we've got larger parcels there, had the potential for up to looks like around 8,500 units. If you were to build it as primarily residential, but I think there's also the potential for non-residential development. For example, if we were to have light industrial or a distribution center or something like that, purchasing the mall property that could occur there. And then the hybrid scenario, again, just using the vacant lands, if we were to increase the densities, was just over 8,000 units. So these are all above the what we think the unmet demand is. But we're not trying to hit it exactly one for one. We're trying to look at what makes sense in terms of vacant parcels that aren't constrained by wetlands. When you get into actual site planning, you may find that there's floodplain issues, or there's soils issues that could prevent them from being used to their highest and best use. So I guess that was a long way of answering that the scenarios would accommodate what we anticipate the projected demand to be, and then provide some market space for different choices. So, not everybody likes the first house that they walk into. So it would provide some additional capacity for people to be able to make, market decisions.
Just going through comments, few folks have reached out saying scenario two makes the most sense. One saying that one of the best sites for multifamily residential in the uptown Oviedo is east of the bike trail and west of Central. So I think that is in relation to what we are in scenario 3, that west of Central area, Kurt. So I want to make sure that's in the record as we look going forward. Another attendee asked if scenario 1 is not chosen, does the reconstruction redevelopment of Old Downtown stop?
So on that last one, no, the reconstruction would not need to stop. What we're looking at here is increasing the potential for those lands for redevelopment to a higher cap, a higher density, or non-residential cap, but it wouldn't necessarily stop any current reconstruction.
We have a question asking why we aren't talking more about transit-oriented development, and this is has some potential for light rail as a mass transit option with Mitchell Hammock, and providing some connectivity to the Sunrail station and down to UCF on a spur for that. The entire comment will be recorded in the conversation. I just paraphrasing right now, so if I miss something, I apologize. But providing the potential for rail along Mitchell Hammock and then north-south connections.
So the densities that we are proposing along those areas in the 40 to 50 range are what's called transit supportive density. So when the Federal Transportation Authority, FTA, looks at how they would fund any new transit stations, they always look to see if a community has in place or already exists sufficient density to be able to support that. I'm not sure that I don't know how viable connecting to Sunrail would be, but I think without these transit supportive uses or densities, it would be a non-starter, because it would be very difficult to get any kind of grant money. As you can imagine, these are very expensive capital projects without increased density at these places.
A few folks have noted that the scenarios 1 and 3 would have some negative impacts for traffic and on the south of Mitchell Hammock area, noting potential wildlife concerns and the neighborhoods below there. If Oviedo Boulevard's extended, they expressed some concern about traffic going through that neighborhood as they voted their support for scenario 2. Just trying to hit a few more folks said that. Teresa responded to a building height. I'm sorry, I'm getting questions after they come in, but Teresa Correa said the mall height has a maximum height of 78 feet today, but the LDC, the Land Development Code, allows for deviations. And Mayor, I think this goes back to one of our previous conversations, but asked, is it accurate to say that if we do not proactively pick now which parcels get even more development rights, the alternative is that the market will incentivize developers to push for whatever they can at a later date? And that goes back to one of our previous questions.
Yeah, I think that is a possibility, going back to, I believe Mr. Pollack asked that question.
Gentleman asked, talking about the mall, and was wondering if that property is actually open for redevelopment at this time.
Well, it is a privately held property, and I would be surprised if other developments or developers were not already reaching out to them, given the state of retail today, and the state of large big box retail, as we've seen a lot of push towards e-commerce. So I think it's something that we want to, as we think long term, make sure we don't forget about that site. And as you could see from our prior workshops, there was a considerable interest from the community in the redevelopment of that site. But we should note that if the city is to change a property's future land use, that does not automatically, generate a new project. All projects, all developers need to go through a site plan review process. They have to, apply for probably a rezoning as part of this. So the city will have many bites at the apple, including at the, the city council level for approval of, a development order. So developers need to do traffic studies. They need to submit environmental studies. They need to show that, they're not going to flood their neighbors. So we're not, throwing any of that out. This is part of our long-term planning, though, to try to, again, proactively show where we think the most appropriate places are for redevelopment.
A few more comments I'll read into the record here. Saying Uptown Oviedo is an example, and I think an opportunity for a public-private partnership to create some of those places for people with streetscapes and sidewalks and connectivity. Another attendee expressed surprise that there's the land to be incorporated into the downtown mixed-use area east of Oviedo Boulevard, given the last public workshop, the results from that. Some plan to mitigate traffic along Mitchell Hammock for folks traveling to 417 and not just to the store. Sorry if some of these are hitting on some previous questions that we.
I think if I can go back a couple slides and show the here it is, the potential for some connector roads on this property. And of course, the city would have to work with the landowner to, to get the right of way for these. But this isn't a scenario that it makes sense to go through the capital expense of building the roads if you don't anticipate development to occur upon it. So this is an area where, again, that could alleviate some of the pressure on Mitchell Hammock by providing a alternative corridor.
Smith asks, as COVID-19 progress, we find that many people begin to work from home more. Do we see this trend continuing? And if so, how is this being taken into account in terms of the pattern of development moving forward?
Well, I think certainly we had talked about a smart and connected community. And that's not something necessarily that is a land use question, but the city could have policies for being able to provide, say, public Wi-Fi service or loaner hotspots or something like that in areas that are maybe disadvantaged or don't have access to broadband. And this is a pretty uncertain time for all of us. We don't know exactly what what building patterns are going to be needed. It could be that office itself is not a desired use in the future because many people are able to work from their home. And in that case, people may prefer to have the traditional single family home with a yard in order to stay home and have that space, and that's okay. We're not proposing any changes to existing single family residential properties within the city.
Another mentioning scenario 2, getting their vote due to the congestion on Mitchell Hammock, and then we have a couple talking about the the south of Mitchell Hammock site again, saying at one point there was discussion about the possibility of keeping the area that's zoned as rural, wondering if that was still viable, providing a buffer to the residents from the neighboring communities. And a second question on that property, asking what is currently allowed and designated in the comp plan, saying that they were not aware that this land had been decided on, so they had that question. So I think maybe one of our previous slides, Kurt, you can show which the current development for that area.
Yes, and to answer the end of that first, nothing has been decided upon. These are ideas for consideration. So no land use have actually been changed at this point. And if they were to go forward to that next step, there would be additional public hearings, first in front of the local planning agency, and then in front of city council with 2 additional public hearings. So nothing has been changed. Let me go back to, I think it's all the way back to the future land use map at the beginning. Sorry, folks, you gotta see me scroll through the whole thing.
And as you're going back, just on that scenario, another attendee expressed or noted that there's a historic cemetery behind that land, and water drainage would need to be addressed. And the mayor did say that on Landon 1, the area that's zoned agricultural is currently under lease until 2034. So that has a current max density of about 45 homes.
Okay, thanks, Tyler, and thank you for the clarification. So the property in question is this green right here, which is currently rural, and that's the property that's under lease. I believe I heard a question about buffering existing communities. So that would be the subdivisions in purple to the north and south, and the low density residential to the east. So if this area were to receive consideration for land use change, we could write in specific sub-area policies for it that require buffers from adjacent, or to try to match like for like, consistent, compatible development with what is adjacent. There's a lot of different ways that buffering can be achieved.
And I know the mayor mentioned that it's under lease, but the part west of Oviedo Boulevard is currently in the downtown mixed use future land use.
Yes.
Right there as the south of Mitchell Hammock Road. So that does include, it's 2 different land uses on that site. And I'm trying to find an answer to a question on 426. So Laura, I'll be.
While you're doing that, let me just pause and talk about our next steps. If say we were to come to consensus on a scenario tonight, or maybe it's a combination of scenarios, we still have a lot of homework to do. We need to go back and look at how this affects transportation, both today and the year 2045. We have to look at environmental conditions. We have to look at infrastructure, how this affects community health, sustainability. We have to update the goals, objectives, and policies, or the text of the comprehensive plan. So that may be an area where specific sub-area policies are written for that area to respect the adjacent residential. Talking about the spray field south of Mitchell Hammock Road. And then, as I mentioned, there would be a number of public hearings that will be advertised in 2021, which we need to have to adopt the comprehensive plan to both authorize the transmittal of the amendments to the state of Florida for review. And then after it comes back from the state, another adoption hearing. So nothing is going to happen overnight, and there's going to be a very rigorous public process to go through this.
So there was a question: is there anything in the plan to widen 426 throughout all of downtown, so residents coming from the Chuliota area can continue on to 426 and to 417 without driving down Mitchell Hammock? I am looking at the this is currently the Seminole County 2040 transportation plan that includes some city projects, state and county. And there's some shoulder improvements, some bicycle pedestrian improvements, and a realignment within the city. But I don't see anything that is programmed or funded for a widening of that in the county's transportation plan.
Right, and it's going to be important for, because that is a county road, for the city to understand what it wants that road to be and how it wants the land uses adjacent to it to function.
So the mayor asked, and this is some conversation in the chat, but I just want to summarize, asking to the attendees if we could find a space to have one of these meetings in person, would you be willing to attend? See a few people saying yes, yes, yes. Some concern about doing it for people with health issues may not be able to attend. Some discussion on attending if certain social distancing and masks are required. Potential for a hybrid meeting where there could be some virtual participation for those who can't, and some in person for those. And I'm just trying to get through. Okay. So that was that conversation that occurred, and
it kind of sounds like you guys are looking for some kind of consensus tonight, and we can't see each other's eyeballs. So I don't know how we can have consensus when we're chatting and chatting in boxes. I'm glad that we're trying to move this forward during a pandemic, but this is a really big decision, and there are rooms at UCF that are set up. So is that something that you guys might be comfortable trying to coordinate, doing some kind of hybrid meeting in a space where at least some of us could get our eyeballs on each other, and then do some breakout rooms, which I thought was very helpful in past meetings?
Mayor, we're certainly willing to help coordinate that. We, as we are starting to hopefully be rounding the corner, I know some other organizations are looking at hybrid meetings. So that is something we can certainly investigate how we can do that. I agree. This is very difficult to do, electronically. Would love to be in person with everybody, because I think we would, we would have, just kind of everybody would be able to, participate a little bit more fully. Yeah, we can talk to our project managers with the city to see what our options are for that. We can also post this on the virtual meeting space that we've used, and we can use a polling feature on that. But I really wanted to have a discussion, because just people sending in their number, we would like to, for their neighbors to understand, why that is they prefer that. So we think a discussion is better than a vote.
So do you want to have a discussion now where everyone turns on their video and we all talk? How do you envision this happening? Because I want to talk with people, and more listen than talk.
Right.
But I'm seeing a lot of concern about the Mitchell Hammock parcel there. So there's one that includes that and three that includes that, and then the only one that doesn't is two. So I don't know that that's the one that people actually like the most. But you put it in there like a poke in the eye, and which you I don't think y'all did on purpose, but now that's a poke in the eye for a lot of people.
So Mayor, almost every time we've done an exercise like this, we end up with a fourth alternative where it's a hybrid of the different components that people like. If we start with a blank sheet of paper, it's very hard to get going. So that's why we prepared three alternatives based upon what we heard before. But as people discuss these things, new ideas are generated, and that's what we're here for tonight. This wasn't to say it has to be singularly one of these, but to have the discussion to help make it better. If it's combining or if it's taking away, then that's something that we can study further. Like I said, we have to do the transportation, the environmental, the housing, the infrastructure study as part of this as well.
So what is the best way for people to get their input, their elaborate input to you? Is it to go to the virtual meeting space after this meeting and just put a little, drop a pin and say, this is my concern, or what?
So we can set that up. It's not currently on the site. So we would have to follow up with everybody to let them know when this material has been uploaded. But that is one way of doing it. I'm sensing though that you would like to have a more collaborative discussion though. So I think we could do it both ways, where it's on the site and people that want to participate that way can do so. And then others that want to participate in a hybrid meeting that's advertised could also do so.
That sounds great. Thank you.
I think there was been a lot of discussion in the chat on that, supporting a hybrid where we can work on that in a consensus at that sort of format as opposed to tonight. We did have some discussion on a vote for scenario 1, really the focus on the old downtown, referencing Winter Garden as an analog. There was some back and forth on whether that's possible, and there's a large percentage is taken up by a church in the old downtown. But I think as planners, we love that sort of feedback too on what you like and analogs, because then we can look at what made it successful and what we can include moving forward on that. We have some more talk on the hybrid, information on the stuff that we discussed.
And Tyler, we also should make note that there's the raise hand tool. So if anybody, just to kind of keep this orderly.
I actually don't believe that is possible actually.
Oh, that doesn't work.
Oh, okay. Nope, there it is.
Yes, if you
David figured it out. I don't have it on the bottom of mine, but that might be because I'm
okay.
posting and recording, so I apologize for that.
Okay, so if just to keep it orderly, if anybody would like to use the raise hand tool, which is part of your toolbar, go ahead and do that, and we'll be able to recognize that in the participants window, and we'll call on you, and please let us know what you're thinking. This is of course optional. You can continue to use the chat, but we want to give you the opportunity to get your voice out there. And since it seems like folks are still looking for the hand raise function. Oh, okay. Mayor, you found it?
I didn't know we were supposed to be doing it. So
Okay.
the way you get to it, guys, you have to click participants at the bottom. And then underneath the list of participants, you can hit raise hand. And then you can hit yes. Wait, oh, I don't see the yes working, because we could like vote and stuff too.
I think
Can the
some of those features, well, it looks like there's a clap, there's a thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up go to Tyler, thumbs down go to me, so we'll know what that means.
Oh, for real? They go to
Yeah.
different ones of you?
No,
That's
they
funny.
don't.
But raise hand goes to the whole group.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, if anybody would like to speak, now is the time. If you have a question you'd like to state to us, and we'll respond to it.
So right now, are you looking for people to say, hey, how about we consider this scenario 4? Is that the kind of level of input?
Sure, that would be fine.
All right.
For questions, I've come to the end of the chat box of questions, so we can do questions as well.
Ooh, Pam, do you want to go live and just talk to everybody real quick? Are you willing to?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I didn't really understand your response, Megan, above when I was pointing out, the cons to the south of Mitchell Hammock land, and you mentioned that it's under lease until 2034 and max development would be 45 units. But these obvious scenarios are saying, let's change the land designation and, you know, increase that density. So my question is, if we do choose one of these scenarios and in the new comp plan till 2045, beginning 2025, we have a higher, you know, density designation, then what are we doing with that lease? What is the city going to do with the lease till 2034? Are you saying that we will not be able to break that lease even with a new land designation?
We don't have a way to, so it's just logistically not possible. It's going to trigger, moving the water from that land back there is going to trigger an investment of somewhere in the $15 million neighborhood. We don't have $15 million. So until we have figured out where we're going to put that additional wastewater, that lease needs to stay. And it is cheaper to rent that land than it is to build it. It'll take 35 years to pay off a $15 million loan. So it's cheaper to leave it where it is. So my personal opinion is, financially, it does not make sense to rush to build it unless the costs are escalating so fast, because it inevitably, the owner of that land will not renew the lease. That's where we are. So they want to do something with it that is more intense than have it be agricultural use. But because Mitchell Hammock is an overburdened road and there is no clear path to fix it at this time, we have an opportunity to wait for technology to catch up. And Council Member Smith pointed out, she said, you know, we're working different places. How is that going to impact where we grow? Well, we have an opportunity, and this is just me talking. I'm trying to listen mainly, but I feel very strongly about that parcel, that it should not have any changes in this particular comp plan, because first off, it makes financial sense for us to park it there until 2034. And then we've only got 10 more years, during which time we're going to redo the comp plan again, and we'll be able to evaluate how fast did technology move. What is our current pattern? How many people actually have come? Did we get close to the 20,000 that we were expecting? Where are we on this cycle? So that's kind of where I am, that we should probably just consider pulling that out of there and look at the other three areas. If we have to add density, there's other opportunities. And we don't have to add density, as David Pollack pointed out. There's just consequences to it. And one of the consequences is we're going to get developers showing up, and they are allowed to ask us for a comp plan change. And a council could say yes. A future council could say yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that response. That kind of clears things up a little bit. So in other words, when we decide to update the comp plan, no matter what we decide on these scenarios, we're not even looking until 2034 to do anything with the 40 acres right now.
Well, a developer came and tried to do it, but the money end of it didn't make any sense, in my opinion, because that person was saying, well, just end your lease and go build this stuff, and the fees will help pay for it. Well, they're triggering a $15 million investment that we were not prepared for. So I don't see how it makes financial sense before then. So you're kind of on the right track. 2034, we can think about it after that.
Right. And if they want to fight it, then we'll put up a fight like we did before. So, but again, if we change it now, we make it easier for them to fight it.
Yes. Well, if we change it now, they win. Like that's the end of it. They win.
Right.
So if we think about it at a later date, we can evaluate whether it's good for our community after there are less moving parts.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Belinda, I see you have your hand raised. If you would like to unmute, go ahead.
And feel free to turn on your video too.
Yes, thank you. That answered my question. I wanted to know about the same portion of land. And as Pam said, this has been something that's been on the table for a while. And those of us who live in that area, it's very important and valuable to us. And there's some clear and concise information that was given tonight. So it's nice to know that We don't have to do anything until 2034. We can write out this lease. That was what we had suspected. I had suspected before. Why were we doing this? But thank you for this opportunity tonight to come out and talk. And I hope that we do have more venues and that we can do a hybrid.
Thank you. Thank you, Belinda. I just want to hit on some other comments on this conversation, saying the developer should be included in some of those fees. I believe that goes to the mayor's point of what it would cost to move, and talking about that site again, looking at it as two pieces, not one, the west of the Oviedo Boulevard extension in the east. We had an attendee asked, and I think this goes back to the hybrid, that instead of making a decision tonight, I'd like to review the presentation, the options, and some other information before a decision is made on this topic tonight. And now I have another question. Belinda, did you have another question, or is your hand still up from before? Sorry.
No, I was just trying to do it. It was from before.
All right, perfect.
No, I'm not still raising my hand.
Conversation before I change the topic to another question.
No, sir. No, sir. Thank you.
This is from Ms. Smith, who asked, which scenario will allow for the ability to begin to move commercial to help enhance and improve and increase?
Tyler, you're cutting out. I think the question was this: which scenario would allow to maximize commercial development?
I think yeah, to begin to do it the earliest. Yes.
Yes, I think all three could do so. Probably when we look at scenario 2 and look at the mall area, that would be mostly a redevelopment scenario, but we think that there would be commercial interest there from a larger user. When you think about access to the 417, so I think that would be attractive there. But we would certainly want to encourage commercial uses in scenario 1 or the hybrid to be part of the downtown fabric. Again, that's where you get vertical mixed use, where you have commercial and residential together. That can improve the tax base quite a bit. And then by, again, having those uses tightly integrated, you can reduce some of the negative transportation impacts, and then build yourself up to be transit supportive for future transit use.
There have been some more comments, kind of I think similar along those lines. The mayor talking with all three, but the mall with the potential for industrial and higher intensities. Some more folks looking at scenario 2, as well as the potential for a scenario 4. We've had a submittal for the scenario 3 hybrid, minus the south of Mitchell Hammock parcel, or the parcel, I think splitting it up was a suggested scenario 4. Few folks are looking for more information and discussion on scenario 2, asking for more information and talking about the information and development densities for that. So.
Okay. So with regards to a hybrid of scenario 3, but taking out that south of Mitchell Hammock parcel that is rural, as it was stated before, the lease is underway until, what was it, 2032. So that could be considered at usually comp plans are evaluated every 7 years. And then go through another kind of big amendment process is generally about every 10 years. So, that issue can be picked back up at that time, certainly. So that is a possibility we can talk through further with the city staff.
I want to just talk a little bit more about some of the scenario 2. Current in the mall and the densities, I kind of skipped over. I can go back.
Yes. So scenario 2, we looked at if you build on the vacant parcels that are within this area, and that doesn't account for knocking down the mall or knocking down any other buildings, but it would have a potential on the vacant lands of just over, we think, 8,500 units at the new proposed densities. That does not take into account floodplain. We haven't looked at that yet, or soils. We haven't looked at that yet. You know, and there's all sorts of things geotechnical you have to look at. We have to look at how that actually does affect traffic. I mean, if we go back and this just blows up Mitchell Hammock and you need 10 lanes, then that wouldn't be very smart of any of us. So we need to, you know, this is kind of the stepping off point for further analysis there.
Mayor asked about how do folks feel about eliminating lanes, not adding. So eliminating lanes, she mentioned Alethea Woods Boulevard or even Mitchell Hammock, and turning them into multi-purpose lanes for options such as bikes or golf carts. We've had Mr. Thoma respond, looking into exploring this as a potential. I think going back to some of the complete streets and multimodal goals. And Teresa, sorry, I see your hand up. Teresa, if you'd like to unmute it, you probably have.
Yes, thank you. No, I just wanted to say here something that scenario 3 is the most realistic, right? The hybrid, because we would expect development to occur where, you know, private land exists and there is development rights. So I think the comp plan has the possibility of steering development. So one of the things that we have to think is, if development occurs in the percolation pond, in the uptown, because the old downtown is going to be redeveloped, development, right? So we know that. So if that occurs, what are the conditions that we want? So what are the buffers that we want? What are the connections that we want, right? So this is the exercise for the comp plan, because we will not be able to stop development. Sooner than later, it will come. So the horizon for the new comp plan is 2045. So passes when the population pond, the lease will be over, if it doesn't happen before, because the city is doing, making movements to remove, interrupt the lease, just because it's expensive for the city as well to pay $200,000 a year for this land, when we have now other areas in the city that could absorb the, you know, the reject water. So this is an exercise for us to think what needs to happen and what are the conditions that we want to see development that brings value to the city, because that's what we want. So I think we need to analyze those 3 scenarios, and in contrast to the qualities that you all, you know, raised before, to see fiscally, in sustainability terms, which you know, scenario will bring the best city for the future. So that is what I wanted to say, because it's easy to say, well, I don't want development near my home, so I'm triggering, you know, I'm just pushing all the development to the mall. I don't think that's going to happen, right? That the old downtown is not going to be redeveloped. And that is unrealistic, I think, to imagine that the whole development will occur only in the mall. The mall is already going through redevelopment, and we have already approved projects to the Macy's parcel. So we have 2 apartment complexes coming to the Macy's. We have the hotel, but the old downtown will be redeveloped as well. And at one point, the percolation pond will also be redeveloped. But buffers, we can require buffers in projects, right? So this is the exercise to imagine what are the conditions, what are the qualities that we want to bring, we want to make developers bring to the city. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa. Just want to follow up on some of the conversation on the bike lanes and everything, because we are reaching our 8 o'clock time. But folks asking about the safety of bikes and golf carts operating in the same space, especially if when things get back to normal and more folks going to UCF. And the mayor responded that Metro Plan Orlando does say yes, that is acceptable. And Mayor, I also wanted to have your comment here. I think it's great to read. For what it's worth, the city cannot continue to pay for all the current services that we enjoy unless very dense urban areas are added to subsidize all the urban sprawl that already exists, or we raise taxes significantly. The vast majority of parcels in Oviedo count as urban sprawl and pay less than they consume in services. I think, Mayor, that succinctly describes some of my slides earlier, so I do appreciate that. A couple other, we have talking about the sod farms and impacts to aquifer and stormwater. Kurt, I think part of what we talked about.
Yes, again, any development will require site plan review and environmental studies.
Oh, yeah.
Concern on that, back to the south of Mitchell Hammock, saying that, you know, that is folks' backyards, and they would like people to be as conservative as possible, imagining that that's their backyard as well. Clay, thank you for noting that due to sod fields are not rapid infiltration basins. Appreciate the response there.
Yeah, to be as specific as possible. Oh boy, this is the backdrop of.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the traffic would be, that might work on Alafaya Woods. Oh, this is going back to everything. So I think
going back to a road diet or lane elimination.
Potential for bike lanes and everything. Yeah.
So we can coordinate with agencies. So some roads are not owned by the city; they're owned by the county. So local roads you would probably have a greater chance of doing lane elimination. As I think somebody mentioned in the comments, Metro Plan Orlando is very supportive of complete street road diets where they make sense. So that is something that you know, can be incorporated, that agency coordination into the comprehensive plan, and that would then, you know, provide further direction to the city to pursue those partnerships and those changes. But it also tells, you know, developers and residents this is what the, you know, this points them in the right direction for the type of roadway that the city wants.
I apologize, Teresa. I think you had your hand up. I went to hit lower hand, and I think I muted you. So sorry about that. I think you can, if you'd like to unmute.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. I'll lower that.
So I think we were a good opening act for the minor event that's happening tonight. It's 8 o'clock. I'm willing to stay on as long as folks want. We'll keep recording the show or the webinar. We do want to be respectful of everybody's time in case you do have a hard 8 o'clock you know, stop time. But you know, we can answer questions. I think we've said it numerous times, but you know, we're not making any final decisions tonight. It sounds like we're going to look to do some kind of a hybrid meeting in the near future where we can get some more participation from a responsible distance. So we will go back and see what the mechanics of setting that up will be. Did everybody, if everybody would leave, Tyler, do we get emails when people sign into this? So we can inform people of next steps? You're muted.
I'm not positive if that comes through, but I'll check. If not, we have, I'm not positive. I apologize for that.
Okay. Well, the meeting's been recorded, the chat log has been recorded. So we'll put this into a summary. We'll kind of analyze, see what the preferences are overall, and then have another discussion on it. So, Mayor, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, I just posted in the chat box. Let's see if we can attempt some sort of a lobby tail end of the meeting, like talking with each other for anybody who's willing. I'm still wearing my run around for the day outfit, but for anybody who's willing, if you want to jump on and we can attempt to just all talk over each other and see if we can hear each other, because there's some people who are concerned that if we do a hybrid, it would kind of leave out the people who are online, and only the people who are there in person would feel included. And I don't want to create a problem rather than solve one if we go this other route.
I will stop sharing my screen, and then I think it'll blow everybody else up in like the Brady Bunch window.
Nice.
So.
Okay, let me see if I can do. Oh, there we go. Gallery view. Okay, we're getting some more. So is everybody's mic on? Let's just talk.
I can tell you that if everybody starts talking, the rest of you won't be able to talk, because only one person can talk at a time in a Zoom call, because it's just not possible for anybody else to talk.
That's true. But then we could if we could have real raised hands and people wouldn't have to have as much technology knowledge. I don't know. I think the breakout rooms, maybe doing that and then shifting, because when y'all did the breakouts, I think it was 4 rooms and they were moderated. We don't need moderators. Just pop us in rooms with 5 people, tell us we have 5 minutes, and whatever the littlest icebreaker is, and then maybe reshuffle us or something so we get to talk to everybody.
I think we need more time. I know that my last time in the breakout room, we couldn't come to a consensus. We didn't have enough time.
Okay. Oh, yay. We've got Mr. Nasser on.
Hi, Sam.
Hi there. I kind of have an out-of-the-box idea. Either scenario 1 or 2 or 3, given the inherent limitations of density and the fact that we will never achieve the allowable density in the areas we have designated, or at least thought to designate, we are not going to achieve 6,000 units, because most of the time we're going to have only 40, 50, at best 60% of the allowable density. Therefore, my thought is we should be open to extending these areas we designated to adjacent areas. If somebody wants to come up with a project that is not in these areas but close to, I think we should be open. Why? Because any project is going to go through the same rigorous exercise of meeting the transportation requirements, the environmental restrictions, and geological studies, and whatever, the whole rigor mortis thing. So every project will have to stand on its own merit. So let's open it to more areas, and naturally they're going to concentrate either along 434 or Mitchell Hammock or 426 or the mall area, because of the good roads we have. Nobody's going to come up with a project that's not close to these areas and is not going to be feasible anyway. And the city, of course, has so many bites at the apple, and they can say yay or nay based on the merit of whatever project is being proposed. So my idea is, let's expand these areas that we just designated, or be open to any proposed developments. How about that?
My thought is, I don't care. Oh, I do care how tall we go, but in general, the density isn't what bugs me. It's the environmental impact. So when you start paving flat and then you have like all this impervious surface, wax it out. But if you put all the parking underneath and you have say you have 4 layers of parking, and then you go another 6 stories high on top of it, but then you have some green space. If all, you know, all the owners who are next to each other, if you're looking at the top and you say you have four parcels, if all of the buildings go to the same part and then you have some green space around it, something like that, I think is something that our town would be into, because nobody wants to leave, but we also don't want to live in our house. A lot of people do not want to live in a single family house with a yard to mow forever. And developers are finding it difficult to sell homes that have this size yard. So that's why they're like, the land costs a lot, but also people do not want to mow. They'd rather have a $500,000 house and no mowing. So we need to start thinking, well, can we create a condo scenario with, you know, 1 floor living and things like that? And how do you simulate? And I think Kurt and the VHB guys kind of said the same thing, that if you put all the park space together, then we all have one big backyard instead of all the fenced areas being private open space. Just have common open space. But that's not what we're used to in the suburbs. Do you think people can get their brains wrapped around that in these new areas?
I think from a outsider's perspective, you know, we see a lot of communities that want to provide for aging in place. So it's that recent college grad that can't afford, you know, a single family home, or it's the boomers that want to downsize. So having those different housing choices is important. And also for workforce and affordable housing reasons. The whole region is in a attainable housing crisis. And when we talk about attainable housing, that's teachers, that's firefighters, that's, you know, police officers. It's not just the low income people that need attainable housing, and, you know, different choices, which could be condos, like you said.
And here's the other kicker. How do we incentivize these to be owner occupied? Like, people don't want that. The reason people don't want to leave their houses and go here is because they don't want to rent a luxury apartment from somebody and have no control over what the rent's going to be. People want to own the place. But there's market factors out there in play that we can't control. And I don't know if Tyler and Kurt have some ideas for what we could do in the comp plan to maybe make that dream come true.
Yeah, we'd have to think about that one and research where other communities have done that to try to really incentivize owner occupied. Usually that is the case, but we could do some research on that.
I just want to say, it's not just boomers that don't want to mow their lawn. I don't want to mow my lawn every week either, so.
I love having a yard. I'm just gonna say, I've always had a big yard. This is the smallest yard I've ever had in my life is right now. I think yard work and having a garden and all of that is wonderful. And Megan, I know you have bees in your backyard, so you have a yard too. So, I mean, having a yard provides a lot of different opportunities for things, but I agree. I think going up is important. I know teachers who can't find places to rent. I don't know about them wanting to own it, but I know that they are looking for places to rent. So yeah, it's important to have affordable housing.
Well, we are still allowing everybody who wants to have a yard to have a backyard, big or small. I mean, they can stay where they are or move to a house with yard. But we should plan for those who don't want the yard. And the trend is very few people, fewer and fewer, want a smaller yard or hardly not any yard.
And I can appreciate the need to meet both of those demands. My wife and I moved here 23 years ago. There were 9,000 people in Oviedo. It was perfect. We found the perfect house. We've been here. We've raised our 3 children here. Now, and this took, I live in Lake Rogers Estates. We didn't have a traffic signal. For the longest time, we couldn't get in or out of our subdivision because traffic going from the 417 to Lockwood Boulevard, either direction, either during the morning or during rush hour in the evening prevented you from ingress, egress. So those things, as we approach retirement, I'm sorry to say, because I've loved living in this community and watch it develop, but it's just way too congested. And I have to question the wisdom of increasing the density further east on Mitchell Hammock Road. It is a nightmare as it is now. And, you know, I heard somebody talk about we would need to be, transportation supportive, or I'm probably not using the right word, but I worked for Lynx in the early 90s, mid 90s. And I watched them petition for light rail for decades. And thinking that Oviedo would get some kind of light rail, I just think is a pipe dream. I just do not see that. Where are you going to go to?
Well, we pulled out, that ship has sailed. We turned all of our rail into trails. It is not coming back, and we're not going to get that.
That's good to hear, because when I heard that, I thought, well, we can change our zoning to high density, and we can suffer through that high density with the current infrastructure for decades. And there is no guarantee. You know, we wouldn't be the only municipality that would be vying for federal dollars for light rail. And I just think that's crazy. So I'm very happy to hear that. But that's the biggest challenge that I see. I realize communities have to grow. I also worked at Altamont Springs for 5.5 years. And during the boom of the Cranes Roost area there, and I wouldn't live or work in Altamont Springs for all of the money in the world. I mean, that I can't, when I think of congestion, I think of I-4 and 436. And then not to mention the safety of, you know, the talk about reducing lanes and putting golf carts and bike traffic on Mitchell Hammock. Are you kidding me? I never let my kids even walk along Mitchell Hammock as they were growing up. It's just too unsafe. There's too many distracted, stressed out, crazy drivers. And I don't mean this as a criticism to anyone here, but it's not conducive for the volume that it's seeing. And given the development that's in place right now, I don't see it. What do? Go on top, do a couple of roads on top of what's already there, elevate that? I mean, the cost of that would be astronomical. I just don't see it. So Mayor Sladek, this is why you get paid the big money to answer these questions, but I'm just a humble resident that is facing retirement. I got 2 of my 3 kids in college right now. And as soon as they're out of the house, my wife and I are probably going to relocate and just kind of remember the days of raising our kids in a fabulous city. I mean, I would think, I haven't read the articles, but why, I'm sure they talked about why do people want to live in Oviedo? And I don't think it's because they want the big metropolitan lifestyle, because that's just not us. It never has been, and I hope that it never becomes that. But anyway.
It's the history and the schools, and the thing listed in Money Magazine. It cracked me up talking about our historic structures. Before I was mayor, for years, was involved with a group called the Oviedo Preservation Project, and we were trying to preserve historic structures, and very few made it. We've got maybe, I would say probably 50 structures that have made it. We started out with about 300. And I'd love to celebrate those things, but a lot of them are in the paths of the maps that were shown tonight. So I don't know how that's going to leave our history.
Well, those are my concerns. I see a couple of you folks shaking your heads and I saw thumbs up. I don't believe I'm in the minority in that feeling. But, you know, here's another issue I have. As I was looking at the participants, I think the maximum we had today was 32. So I know there's apathy, but I also know that personally, had I not seen something on Nextdoor Lake Rogers, I wouldn't have known this meeting was even taking place. So I don't know if there's a way that we can improve the marketing of this, try to get more people involved in that. I just don't know. I have become a cynic over my life, and I don't know of all of you who are sitting here who are city employees or who are developers or whatnot, but I have a fairly a distaste in my mouth for development because it just seems to be very short-sighted and very, you know, it's proposed as being beneficial to all, but it really benefits a very small portion of people. And when you talk about, you know, sharing the infrastructure fees and developments and whatnot, many times those get passed off onto the taxpayer and whatnot. I certainly don't want to see my taxes go up, but I don't want to see in the next 20 years, the population of Oviedo go from, I think you listed 41,000 to 100,000. I just think that would be, I just can't imagine that. I have a very hard time imagining what that would look like.
It was a projection of 60,000 from 40.
Okay.
Right.
But you think we'd be making that list as, you know, the top 10 cities in the United States to live in with that kind of explosive growth? I don't know.
May I ask a question? Earlier, Megan, you had said something about taxes, and I actually have a young family like that gentleman. I live across the street in Kingsbridge West. I've lived here for 25 years. I started out, I moved here with my parents when I was in college, and then I got married and I bought a home here in Oviedo, and we have 2 children, ages 8 and 10, and they go to Stenstrom, and my children would love to. It's really funny. If you come through Kingsbridge West, people will tell you when they buy into this neighborhood that they saw my children. And that's part of why they bought here, because they love to see children outside playing on go-karts and bikes and doing these kind of old-fashioned things in a small city. And we don't let our children ride their bikes to school or walk to school because of the exact same things you've pointed out. It is very dangerous. There's a lot of cars driving by. There was the previous mayor had told us there's something like 3,000 people who drive through Oviedo, that section of the roads, that are not even residents of Oviedo. It is very scary with people texting and things like that, even though there's a sidewalk. It's very scary. But Megan, you had said something about taxes and raising taxes, and I had missed that. And I would like to know what you had said, if you could tell us that again.
Okay, so in Oviedo, we do not collect enough in property taxes to cover our police and fire. We rely on fees paid for, you know, using our building department or Parks and Rec or whatever it is, or gas tax, things like that. And all of those things are shrinking. So as everyone's energy efficiency is getting better and the cars are getting more fuel efficient, our budget, the portion that's the majority of our budget, keeps shrinking. So at some point, we are not going to be able to sustain the infrastructure. We cannot even maintain what we currently have if we do not change something about the way we operate the business of our city. So there's really 2 ways to address this, and that is you earn more or you spend less. And Jocelyn, you're talking about how you like your yard. I love my yard, but I don't mow it. So I'm a spend less kind of a person. We disconnected our irrigation. If it falls from the sky, great. But that is not the style of maintenance and upkeep that Oviedo has become accustomed to. So we have a choice to make here. Are we going to start embracing the natural and moving in that direction so we can keep taxes steady? Or do we want to find a way to have high density urban areas subsidize the style of life that we have become accustomed to, because the numbers simply do not work. So we were able to balance the budget this year without raising millage. Next year, staff did an amazing job. Most departments shrunk their budgets and made them as efficient as possible. It cannot be done year after year after year. So at some point, we're going to have to make this choice. And this is a good time to make it when we're doing our comp plan. Are we going to choose the density, or are we going to say, let's be like Colorado and we just won't mow the sides of the road. We'll make them wildflowers. And, you know, and it would be more extensive than that. It would be, there's a lot that we'd have to cut back on.
Mayor, just to compliment, the issue with density and the urban pattern and the suburban pattern is that the suburban pattern is not sustainable. It's not that we don't like cul-de-sacs or local roads, or it's just, it's not sustainable.
It's the roads. So like you've got, say you're at the very back of Live Oak Reserve, not to pick on that particular subdivision, but it's got really long roads. So you go and you go and you go and you get to the edge of the subdivision and you ride another 2 miles to get to the house after you're inside the subdivision. Well, all of the taxpayers at large have to pave that 2-mile stretch of road that only a select few people use. So we're getting creative with financing and trying to structure things in a way that feels fair, because there's going to come a time when people say, well, that doesn't feel fair that you're raising my taxes, and whose road's getting fixed? Well, not mine, it's somebody else's. So how do you create a fair thing moving forwards?
So not only, it's not, so the single use type of development, like the suburban here, the commercial, the shopping center over there, means that everybody has to commute for any action, right? Any activity you have to, and since we don't have transit, and we do not have transit because we do not have density. So, you know, if you put a bus, and we are trying to discuss a circulator line in the city, right? A small circulator in the city to connect, you know, job, you know, centers that we already have, commercial centers that we already have. But if you don't have density, we are not able to connect, you know, to bring transit. And if you're not bringing transit, the suburban pattern is auto-dependent. And that is why it's dangerous for, you know, to allow kids to, you know, to walk and bike in the streets. Now, the urban pattern is different. The urban pattern requires you, so you have more density, so you can walk to places, right? So if you live in Oviedo, the park, you can go to watch something in the park, you know, an event in the park. You can go to a restaurant. You can come to City Hall if you have any business either by bike or walking, right? So the urban pattern brings that the different lifestyle that is more sustainable. We are creating now a sustainability task force in the city. We are going to discuss all these issues. So the problem with the suburban pattern is that it's great to have a large yard and you know, but it's not sustainable. Not everybody can have a large yard, right? So we will have to offer, and to Mr. Nasser's point, the city's trying to offer different options to residents, to present residents and future residents. So we are not trying to mess with the suburban area that we have, and that's substantial, right? Almost half of our city is made with suburban neighborhoods. We are trying to bring the new development. We are trying to shift the paradigm from suburban to a more urban, to bring the qualities and the issues that will make the city more sustainable. So we want to bring development that can increase capacity in the roads, not only for cars, for pedestrians. We want to push connectivity so people can walk. If you cannot, you know, bike or get a car, you can walk to places, you can bike to places. So this is the urban, you know, pattern of development that we are trying to bring. So, you know, just to kind of, you know, respond to some comments.
With all due respect, I understand that. It makes sense, right? Model. It makes sense. It sounds good and it looks good and everything like that. But we live here and we're real people. And the people who come here like suburban life. It's an ideal. It's an American dream. It started after World War II, right? The suburbs. Everybody wants to live in the suburbs and raise their children in the suburbs. Look at downtown Orlando. I wouldn't raise my children down there if you paid me. I don't want to live in that type of lifestyle. We bought here for a reason. But the other thing is walking. Who walks? I mean, it's great for us. I live in Kingsbridge West. No, and no offense to you, Megan, but I live in Kingsbridge. COVID, I've had to use the park for exercise because the gyms were closed, and it's been a great thing. I've actually enjoyed it. My family and I have went there and it was wonderful, but it's only accessible to the people who live right here. And so increasing those people, first of all, putting those high density things on our doorstep, it's unattractive. Those buildings are not attractive. You drive through Winter Springs, some of them are attractive. You drive through Maitland, not so attractive. It doesn't matter how they are. They look crowded. Go through Winter Park. It's unattractive. We don't want that. So how do you make it attractive? And how do you not increase the traffic? Everybody's saying it's the traffic. We don't want more people and we don't want more traffic. So how do you do it in a way that we can get money for taxes and the city can be sustained, but at the same time, please all the people? You know, there's a lot of components to this. It's not just what you see on paper. There are real people's lives and how they live their lives and where they live that comes into consideration, you know? That's why I think some of the plans and the density in other areas, that's not where the quote unquote suburb, the mall is not a suburb. It's not a suburban area. It doesn't look that way. So for those of us who do live in this area and have lived here for a long time, you know, fine. Maybe in the future, the people who live in Oviedo, the residents, as the residents here, you know, sorry to say this, a lot of older people, but as their lifespan decreases and the rest of us, you know, I plan on living here for the next 25 years with my children. So this affects me. I want to get old here, you know. There's a way, but it's got to meet all the people who are involved here, not just what you see on paper. There's more to it than that. And I think we can probably come to agreement, but there's real lives and real families and real stories that are impacted by it.
I understand. What I was going to say is that I think the challenge is to find the balance, right? Is to find the right balance. It's, you know, we're not going to be a metropolitan area, right? We are not going to be New York City. It's to find the right balance for the city. But how are we going to move forward to be more sustainable? How are we going to bring development that we are not stuck in the Mitchell Hammock? Right? Because if you continue the suburban pattern, the price to pay is to be stuck in Mitchell Hammock. Because if you're not going to walk, and this is a personal choice, right? But there are people who like walking and biking, not only to exercise, but to commute. And the younger generation is doing much more of that. So if we do not allow, you know, the options for the, you know, for a more balanced, you know, lifestyle, then we're going to be stuck in Mitchell Hammock because that's the suburban pattern, right?
I'm hearing.
I'd love to see the statistics on the people who walk and bike in Florida.
Exactly.
Really, I would like to see that because it's very hot here.
I'm also hearing a lot of bias. Unless we want to be sustainable or we want to compete with the other urban areas, we don't want that. We are the people and we don't want that. We want to keep our suburban area, and all this growth that's being pushed on us. I understand this is a comp plan meeting here, but I'm hearing so much bias, and I don't really even quite understand, and forgive me because I didn't attend the first two meetings. I didn't really even hear about it until Belinda shared with me tonight. But Kurt and Tyler, your company, so I understand it, is hired by the city to come up with these scenarios for our comp plan. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. We're helping to facilitate the.
Okay, so your primary goal in coming up with these scenarios or a comp plan for the city is based on what objective, what goal? 30-person consensus? I don't get it. I mean, I'm
well,
like trying to understand why we can't hear the voice of Oviedo before making these decisions. A 30-person meeting is not a consensus for the voice of Oviedo.
yes, and to be fair, I think to everyone, we would much rather be doing this in a community center together where we'd have a lot more than 30 people. I'm not sure if you heard the beginning of the presentation, but all cities and counties are required by the state of Florida to prepare a plan that looks at growth for a minimum of 10 years and has to use population projections to justify the land uses that are put on the map, as well as to analyze how the transportation systems and the other public infrastructure will actually work. Before this law went into effect in 1985, many communities just did not even think about how they were going to be supporting growth or not. So they may have said, we're gonna allow as many people as we want, but they didn't think about how the schools could handle it or how the roads could handle it. So this is the way that all cities, again, as required by the state, have to take that big picture look and be proactive for the future.
So Kurt, if I may ask you a question, as part of that digging into that, the demographics of the citizens, it seems to me, again, anecdotal, based on the traffic that I see going to work every day and coming home every day, that a lot of residents of Oviedo do not work here in Oviedo. We work elsewhere. Does anybody have any kind of data on that, percentage or otherwise? And the other thing I have concern with is the commercial and the multi-use. And Ms. Correa, I understand the dynamic of multi-use development in the urban setting. But are those, what kind of jobs are we bringing to Oviedo? I mean, I'm sure we have some professors that are at UCF that are making a higher than average salary. There may be some Harris Corporation and other folks in that triangle, that research triangle, that are higher paying jobs. But aside from those, it just seems like, and especially with the advent of e-commerce, and you see stores closing, the mall, when I first moved here, the mall was still under construction. We couldn't wait for it to be completed. And over 23 short years, it's in incredible decline. My point in that is this, is from an employment standpoint only, how many folks can we realistically expect to be employed locally here in the city? And of those folks, what kind of salary can they be expected to earn? And is that going to be viable to attract people to get to that high density metric? And will it sustain the tax base needed to provide the additional utilities, sewer, wastewater? I understand you must not have a homeowners association if you're not watering your lawn. How do they let you get away with that, Mayor? Because I get one little speck of whatever in my neighborhood and I'm getting a letter saying, hey, you're gonna have to take care of this and clean this up. And that's all well and good. I do appreciate that. I'm kind of making fun of that. But I would be curious, what is that mix? How many folks are commuters? Are we, 23 years ago, this was a commuter, most of the residents were commuters. We were driving downtown or, maybe working in Longwood, someplace like that. But what is that today, 23 years?
It's the same. We still are a commuter town. There's a lot of people who work from home. I work from home. A lot of people with COVID, I think, are going to begin working from home. But the demand, the League of Cities has a presentation from Dr. Snaith over at UCF addressing a lot of these statistics, and I think it's about 2 weeks off. But last time I heard him do the stats for our area specifically, it was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. And it was fascinating. He says that there is a latent demand for 10,000 units. So that's about 50,000 people. Because they're big houses that are being built at this time. This was the McMansion era a couple of years ago. My in-laws actually closed on a house on Friday, this past Friday, not in Oviedo. She insisted on new construction and said, I want to live in suburbia. So she's living in urban sprawl in Orlando. So there are people who want that, but it does not seem environmentally sustainable to say the remaining land at Oviedo, we're just going to turn it all into exactly what we already have. Because that takes, it creates a different scenario. So say you have an apartment building at the edge of the road. The way that's set up, the taxpayers pay, the developer brings all the utilities there in the first place, or they're already laid there and all you do is tap in. But for the course of that building, everything inside the building, the people in the building pay for all those pipes. But in Kingsbridge West, and where I live, the taxpayers at large pay for all the pipes that line every single road going everywhere. I only pay for the pipe from the meter to my house. So it's a completely different amount of infrastructure needed, and that is a burden to the taxpayers at large when you do multifamily with a condo association or that style of development versus single family checkerboard the earth. And what we've done so far, where we have everything, the pipes going everywhere, that's the thing that's not sustainable. So there is a latent pressure on the housing market. If we build it, they will come. The question is, do we want them to come? And I'm getting mixed reviews. So the choices, and just to make sure that it's very clear, there was a slide back a little while ago. If we do nothing, the development rights already exist to build, I want to say it was 3,100 units, or if they do certain things to take advantage of its incentives that already exist, that we already have to say yes to under our existing law. We can bump that up to, what is it, 4,100 or so? With bonuses. With bonuses. Yes. But these are not optional bonuses. These are if you do certain things, and Dr. Correa could probably speak to this. I think the way it's set up is if you do these things, we have to say yes. And that means that we're really only looking for potentially another 2,000 units to put somewhere. And that is not because we have to, but because if we don't do it, the developers will come and hijack our system and try to make it happen. I think it kind of boils down to that. And it won't happen immediately. It will probably happen 20 years from now. And they'll say, well, I've now assembled all this stuff. And Kurt explained that, I think, or maybe it was Tyler, like where you've assembled some property, you say, well, gosh, I ought to be able to X, Y, Z. And then you apply for the comp plan development, like Dorworth's do it. And you just do it over and over and over and over. And finally somebody says, just leave me alone. We don't have enough legal fees to fight you off anymore. Fine, you can do what you want. And I'm not one to cave into that, but I do not anticipate being here in this position 20 years from now.
Understood.
I did see that Mr. Ott had his hand raised. I want to give him a chance. And then I think we're probably at a time where we need to wrap up, because we're not going to solve all this tonight, but reconvene, hopefully face to face. But Mr. Ott, I wanted to give you a chance before we wrap up.
Thanks. It was said before, so it sounds like there's a lot of people on here that aren't really interested in expanding, building all of the high density. Mayor Sladek, you said before that as we currently are, we're currently not really able to sustain with the type of densities and things that we have. What is it that makes that true? What is it that makes us different from other cities? Are we spending too much money?
No, it's all of us. It's all the cities. Yeah, so it's not unique to us. It's every suburban city in the whole country. There's a group out of North Carolina called 3 Urban, and they do these magnificent maps. And they show, they take your whole like they do a map of the city and they show you what is generating taxes and what takes them. So on our books, for accounting purposes, roads are an asset. They are not an asset. Roads every 40 to 50 years have to be completely rebuilt from scratch, from the base on up. Our stormwater pipes, the first time the developer gifts them to us and we're like, oh, look, we have shiny new pipes, great. And our incoming annual taxes, the millage covers maintenance of the pipes. What it does not cover is the pipes failed in Mead Manor on Panther Street. So we put in, so we have a stormwater fee and we put in all new pipes, which required pulling up the entire road and rebuilding an entire road. The first time the developer handed it to us, the second time, nobody handed it to us. So all of us collectively paid for that. When this starts happening, like, because we had a lot of growth in the 40s, not 40, 1990s. So when we get to 40 years out, 2030, we are going to start seeing significant infrastructure challenges. And we can't do it over and over again. So either taxes have to go up or there has to be something new. So everyone's like, oh, well, you can't use the impact fees to sustain ongoing maintenance. No, you can't. But if you look at the charts that 3 Urban does, and I'll post this on my Facebook page or something, but it shows the urban centers and it's in the black. So that can subsidize the sidewalks that are just dripping and the roads that are dripping out to the suburbs, to the cul-de-sac. Because we have accepted responsibility to provide these roads to the people who live in suburbia. But those houses, because of the 3% cap on your tax, so you get assessed, you move in, and you say, I'm going to live in Oviedo forever. So your house gets locked in and can only go up in value 3% a year. So we have people who are not paying they're not paying what they consume in services. Like, I don't think I am. I don't think a lot of us are.
Plus the dynamic of homestead exemptions.
Yeah.
Reduces taxes as well.
Yeah, we've got so many owner occupants that we have that as a significant issue in Oviedo.
Yeah.
Well, this is why we are having these meetings and planning sessions to have controlled growth. And as Dr. Teresa Correa just said, we channel the growth and influence it to the best way it should happen. Not everybody comes and does what they want, but that's why we have the consultant and the city staff and everybody involved. This is not an isolated meeting. This is a public meeting. Everybody is invited to it and everybody has a say. So this is the best way to have controlled growth, and we all have to be a part of it because we are in the boat. We either swim together and stay afloat or we sink. We cannot sustain the way it is. We just have to be flexible and accept growth because it's going to happen.
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Nasser. I think you summarized that very well. We're going to take all of the feedback we got. We've got a record of the chat window, a recording of the meeting. I don't think we're going back to the drawing board. I think we are, based on your input, able to make some, constructive changes for consideration at the next meeting. So we're going to work with our staff as well as Dr. Correa and Deborah Pierre on next steps for this.
Can I just say one thing? I don't think that the residents knew that there was an issue with the money, that there was an issue with property taxes and our police and fire. So information defines how you react to things. So we need the information. So this is valuable information that now we know. We understand that you have need for taxes. We have the facts, but we want to make sure that it goes in our direction so that it benefits us.
Balanced, controlled. Yes, that is the way it is. This is the whole idea behind these sessions and consultant involvement, to have it controlled and we grow in the right direction, the right way.
On our terms.
Yeah, we are listening. We are doing what should be done. We're not just going to bulldoze our way through. No, I think we have to be open-minded that life is growth. We cannot stagnate. We just have to grow. We all have children. They get married, they have children, they need homes, they need to live just like everybody else. You can have a nice house, nobody stops you, but allow room for the new generation who doesn't have enough money to go buy a house as big as your house. So we should all be flexible.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We really appreciate the passionate discussion. Like I said, we're going to take all this to heart and come back to you with some modifications and proposals for next steps. So again, thank you for spending almost 3 hours with us. Obviously, a lot of passion. You guys really care about your community. We love it. We want to help you as your consultant. Create the best plan we can for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Have fun with the debate, everyone.
Everyone.
Good night.